Welcome to Successful Living. I'm your host, Rob Auclair, financial planner at Balanced Wealth Management in East Greenwich, Rhode Island. On today's show, we're going to tackle budgeting. Never a fun word to talk about, but we'll talk about it from a financial standpoint, but also from an emotional standpoint. Then we'll be joined by our real estate expert, Chad Kritzis from HomeSmart Real Estate. And Chad will tell us about the state of the market and also help us debunk some myths around the real estate area. We will also then get into market correction. With the stock market soaring as it is right now, what is a market correction and how do you prepare for it? And then lastly, we'll finish up with our viewer question on student loans and refinancing that. So let's start with our word of the day. Our word of the day is budget. Budget is an estimate of income and expenditure for a set period of time. So years ago, budgeting was super easy. You had one bank account, you had a lot less expenses, there was no Amazon, you didn't have all these things floating around in space, and it was a lot easier to quantify and put this stuff in order. And now it's become more and more difficult, so we want to address that. More importantly, with all the chaos that goes on, it gets anxious and people get anxiety. So a couple statistics that really, were thrown out to me here was 62% of people that budgeted actually felt more in control of their money. 55% claimed to be happier and more confident. So with that in mind, when you can budget, even though it's one of these things that we all cringe at and we don't want to do, let's take a look at actually how we would budget. So here's some simple steps. Number one, every month you want to make sure that you budget before the month begins. So if you're thinking of doing it in February, get started pretty soon and start thinking about what's going to come up in the month of February. The second thing you're going to need to do is identify your income. If you have W-2 wages, if you have commissions, you want to estimate what the income is that's going to be there. And then part two of the calculation, which is number 3 on our list, are the expenses. There's 3 sorts of expenses. One would be our fixed expenses, and our fixed expenses would be like our mortgage, anything that's the same time every month, the same amount. Then we have our variable expenses within there. And our variable expenses we have them every month, but they're different every month. So we have to estimate, okay, am I going to pay more for gas or electricity because I'm using it more in February than I would in July or whatever it may be, and be able to estimate that. And then the third sort of expense is discretionary. Am I going out to eat? Do I have Netflix? Whatever it may be. And what you want to be able to do is be able to estimate what's there. The fourth thing is month to month. So be very specific on month to month. Let's say you're in March, you're going to take your February, all your expenses in February, you're going to say what's changing now in March and be able to estimate some of that stuff. So things that come up, if you have a holiday, a birthday, make sure that you plan for those expenses that are coming up. It's all about this planning ahead. And then the fifth thing, which is a zero budget, which I actually never understood, and I always thought it meant, get your bank account down to zero. It's not necessarily that. It really means every dollar that you bring in for income, make sure it's spoken for. And so when you get to the end of, I've got income minus my expenses, make sure that you're saving, make sure that you're paying down debt or whatever else might be there. No dollar goes uncategorized. So that sounds in a sense pretty simple. It's what comes in, what comes out, and be at zero. So now how do we put all this stuff together? And with technology and the way things have kind of got all convoluted, technology has actually helped us. And there's a way now, if we have all these different accounts, that we can download those in. So let's take a quick look here at the top budgeting apps. My favorite, Personal Capital. This is if you have a retirement plan and investments is kind of your focus and you're going to budget in there. It's a super easy interface. Number 2, you need a budget. It's called YNAB. Super detailed budgeters might want to look at this. This is the only one that actually costs money. It's $84 a year. Mint.com, that's actually a free budgeting software, and that again is very in-depth. And then Good Budget. Simple budgeters, we call it the envelope method. And in the old days, you'd put $10 in to spend on a certain thing, put in one envelope. You have a whole bunch of envelopes and you pull them out. This is the digital version of that. What I say when it comes to budgeting, just do it. It brings in awareness. The clients that do it for me, they become very successful, they become very happy, they become confident. It's more of an emotional peace of mind in which they have. So when we come back, we'll be joined by Chad Kritzis. We'll talk about the real estate market and debunking some myths out there. We'll be right back.